The Amalfi Coast. It's jaw-dropping in its beauty, but getting around can be complicated, time-consuming, exasperating, and can blow your budget if you're not in the know. We're sharing everything we learned during the 5 days we explored this incredible mountainous Italian coastal area. Stick around to the end to hear how you can save time, money, and avoid frustration on this bucket list destination. I'm Judy.
And I'm Kevin. Welcome back to Finding Gina Marie, where we share our lives as full-time travelers and the connections we make along the way.
The Amalfi Coast lives up to the hype, but there is so much to know before you go. We'll tell you what we did and what we do differently next time. We stayed in a small village called Positano in Aggravelo to save money, but there are hidden costs that we'll talk about at the end of this episode. This is the first part of a multi-part series where we bring you to each of the places we visited: Amalfi, Positano, Ravello, and Capri. We also hiked the Path of the Gods, and we're excited to share that with you as well. And yes, Capri isn't technically on the coast, but it's central enough that we're including it here. Moving between these scenic cities requires advanced planning and takes time, so buckle up. We arrived in Rome on June 2nd, where we met up with our daughter for her first visit to Italy. From there, it's easy to get to Naples. The high-speed train from Rome takes only a little over an hour and cost us €40 per person. And if we were going to Sorrento, we could have taken another hour-plus train there. We stayed in Aggravelo to save money, but there are hidden costs that we'll talk about at the end of this episode, as well as the best time of year to visit. This bit matters way more than you might expect. Our train from Napoli Centrale to Castellammare di Stabia took an hour, and we paid €15 per person. And our taxi to Positano added another 30 minutes. Our driver Eduardo was great. His cash price for this trip was €70 or €80 if you used a credit card. Renting a car and driving yourself is risky. The roads are narrow and difficult to navigate. Parking fees are extremely high. You can waste a ton of time stuck in traffic. And you don't want to deal with an accident or be the cause of one in a foreign country. We're staying in one of the small little villages, and it's at the very tippy top of this entire area in Amalfi.
And the road coming down looks like this.
I can kind of get motion sickness, and I definitely felt it. It was long. It was over an hour to get all the way down.
There's a bus that comes down to the Amalfi station, and then we're trying to take a ferry over to Positano. But the process is very slow. You have to get one step, then one step, then one step.
And you want to take an early bus because ours was full and there were standing room only for a lot of people.
And that was the 8:20 bus that actually came at 8:30. So yeah, get there early, grab the early bus. They fill up really quick. Getting from one place to another on the Amalfi Coast can be tricky and time-consuming. The roads in this part of Italy are full of switchbacks and tight turns due to the mountains. If you get car sick, you may want to bring some precautions with you or make a plan to reduce your travel through the mountains. Before you go, decide where you want to spend most of your time. Arguably, it's hard to know before you go, but hopefully after watching our series, you'll be able to get a clearer picture of what will suit you best. If you have a favorite destination, let us know why, and also tell us what time of year you visited. We'd love to know. We're waiting in the main piazza, and we're getting ready to hop on a bus to take us to Ravello for the day. Hopefully it won't be overcrowded. We're not getting a super early start. It's a 9:30 bus that we're planning to take. That will take it. Early enough. So our best efforts at getting the 9:30 bus failed. It was too full. We didn't get up early enough for the 8, which did work a couple days ago. So now we thankfully found a taxi that's getting us down the hill. But there's no other way down if you miss those buses except get a taxi.
Or you could have waited till 12.
Yeah, there's another bus, but we couldn't trust that that one wasn't going to be full either. So.
And it was 3 hours later.
Yeah, it's a long time, 3 hours.
The bus system through the Amalfi Coast is cheap, but far, far from ideal. We visited before the crowds were in full swing, but there were still a shortage of buses. At the height of the season, there are a few more buses for each departure time, but there will still not be enough for the crowds. Logistically, there will always be a forced limit on buses because areas in the mountains are too narrow for buses to pass each other.
On the bus route from Amalfi to Ravello, there are sections of the roadway that they have to let one train of cars through, and that's where we ended up delaying on the bus. We had to sit, I thought it was traffic or construction. It's just that they had to line up cars, let one set pass through, and so it's built into the bus schedule, but you still need to make sure you plan enough time between places, especially Amalfi to the mountainous areas. There's always going to be some twisting and turning and delays.
And also, if you have an appointment or something scheduled, you cannot trust that you're going to get on a bus at the time that you're expecting to. So give yourself plenty of padding. I know we have changed our plans to go back up to Positano because we don't trust what the travel schedule is going to be.
Give yourself a couple bus options after the one you thought would be too safe. No. Give yourself enough time.
We still recommend it over driving, however, but you need to really plan and prepare as much as possible. We'll give you some additional tips at the end. We found that Amalfi is a central point for many of the coastal towns you might want to visit. So if you're staying in Agarola like us or in other areas, getting to Amalfi is often your first destination. From Amalfi, you can take another bus to your destination or take a ferry. We'll talk more about them in a bit.
The souvenir shop that sells the bus tickets is way past the bus area. You have to go up the hill, past the church, make a left, and there's a souvenir shop in there, and it's got a sign outside that has the bus schedule on it. So that makes it a little easier to see, but as with everything else here in Amalfi, give yourself time. Everything seems to take a little bit more time.
These buses are all part of the JUDY'S system that will take you to and around the Amalfi Coast. You'll need to buy tickets in advance at either a tobacco shop, which has a big letter T on the outside, or else a coffee shop or a souvenir shop. But let's first talk about getting from your home base to your destination for a day trip. From our spot in Positano, the Agarola to Amalfi bus ride cost us €2.40 per person. That's a cheap fare, but if you can't get on a bus, a taxi is very expensive, if you can get one. For instance, in early June, there was a 9 a.m. bus from Agarola to Amalfi, and then there wasn't another bus until noon. Unfortunately, by the time the bus arrived, it was nearly full and half of the people at the bus stop didn't get on. People in Italy cluster and scramble and don't form a queue, so even if you arrive before the bus is scheduled to arrive, there isn't a guarantee that you'll be the first aboard. And there aren't necessarily taxis standing by waiting to take you to Amalfi, so it could take an hour or more to have one get to you. We learned the hard way to make sure we gave ourselves plenty of time to catch the earliest buses. There was only one bus at each scheduled time, so we didn't have a backup bus when it was full. The schedule changes often, so be sure to refer to the latest version. Now let's talk about getting back to your home base from Amalfi. Nothing prepared us for the Hunger Games situation we encountered while trying to get our bus from Amalfi back to Agarola.
Here's the bus chaos for Positano and Agarola, trying to get back up this mountain. You don't know which bus it's going to be. They just keep them all saying Amalfi until the last minute, and then eventually you'll see it light up and just squeeze on. It's insane. And there's people standing across the street, and there's several lanes of buses, but you don't know which one is which until last minute. So it's not even a process. It's just a free-for-all. I don't know why they do this here, but they say it gets worse. This is early June. They say it gets worse in late June and July and August. So this is as good as it gets apparently in the shoulder season. Good time of year. Still, the bus system here is just rough. Buffer. Schedule a lot of time ahead. Okay, you can see all these people queuing up for this bus, so they don't even know what it is.
When the destination finally was lit up on the bus, throngs of people did everything they could to get to the front of the lines and ensure they could get on the bus. There was nothing polite or friendly about the process at all. It was every person for themselves. When you do catch a bus, you aren't guaranteed a seat, which can be a wild ride on the twisty roads. Each hour, there was one single bus that would take people to Sorrento or Positano or Agarola or Bomerano or Salerno. There'll be more during high season, but the number of people will be greater, so it will be equally or more challenging than it was for us very early in the season. Also, if you miss your bus or don't get on, you're a bit stuck. After spending the day in Positano, we took a ferry to Amalfi to catch a bus back to our hotel. But the ferry took longer than we expected, and we missed the bus by a few minutes. The next bus didn't depart for another nearly 2 hours. While there were taxis not far from the buses in Amalfi, no taxi was willing to accept less than 100 euro to take us home. And why should they? There are so many tourists, and they're in such high demand that you're really at their mercy. Once you get to the coastline, either by taxi or bus, you can take a ferry to other destinations to avoid the bus congestion. The ferries can also fill up, but they have a greater capacity than buses, of course. The crowds are less chaotic boarding ferries than buses, but they can still be intense, and there may be disorganization since people will still cut in line. That seems to be a running theme in southern Italy. Orderly queues are more a concept than a reality. There are different ferry providers, but not all of them go to every location on the Amalfi Coast. Depending on your destination, they cost us approximately 10 to 15 euro per person. You can book a ferry online to avoid the lines at the ticket booths, but of course you're still going to have to queue up to board the ferry. Before we talk about all of our great tips and how to save money, we're excited to share that we've started our own absolutely free community forum that we are calling La Familia. You can ask questions about trip planning and all things related to travel there. A video with the details is linked in the description below.
Look at those beautiful colors. I don't know whose idea it was to build up. It's beautiful, but that could not have been easy.
Tip number 1, have a home base and visit all the other areas as day trips. You absolutely don't want to schlep your luggage around to each destination. This is a mountainous area, and you are likely to need to hike up some serious stairs, and bringing luggage with you on a bus is a disaster. If we were to plan our trip to the Amalfi Coast again, we'd make some changes. On the way to Bomerano, we took a train from Naples to Castellammare di Stabia, thinking we'd save time and money. But that train was difficult to board with the bigger suitcases our daughter brought, and it didn't save us any time. If you're planning to stay on the coast of Capri, the train from Naples to Sorrento plus a ferry is the most cost-effective travel. But for any of the South Coast or mountain destinations, paying 140 euro for a direct car from Naples is worth the price. So our first tip, add up all the travel costs to your final destination before you book your train travel. If you're staying in Positano, Amalfi, or Ravello, pre-arrange a taxi from Naples to take you and your luggage, unless you're a solo traveler who packs very light. Tip number 2, speaking of final destinations, where you stay can make or break your budget. It cost us 730 euro and 84 cents for 5 days, or 146 euro 17 cents per night to stay in Bomerano. It was a beautiful town and is at the doorstep of the Path of the Gods, but because we were making daily trips to other areas of the coast and the buses were often full, we ended up paying for taxis. No amount of planning is going to guarantee hopping on a bus will work for you. Our second tip is to stay closer to where you're spending the most time. For example, if you want to visit Positano, Amalfi, and Capri, you should book lodging in Amalfi within walking distance of the port. The farther up the mountains you stay, the more likely you'll incur bus delays or taxi costs. At up to 150 euro per trip, taxi rides add up quickly. Just 4 rides will add 500 to 600 euro to your expenses. Ferry rides are less expensive and easier to take than buses. If you've stayed in Amalfi and have recommendations of where to stay, we'd love to hear them. Tip 3. Our final tip is to avoid visiting Amalfi in July and August. We visited in early June and the crowds were heavy, but we were told that the crowds can more than double or triple during high season. Late September and October are less crowded months, and the water is the warmest for swimming. Late May and early June are also better for crowds as well. Book accommodations as far in advance as possible so you can get the most options at more affordable prices. The great places will book up quickly, and you don't want to have to compromise on price or location. We hope you've enjoyed this video. If you haven't already subscribed, we'd love for you to do that. And one of the best compliments you can give to us is to recommend our videos to your friends and family.
Check out findingginary.com. We have articles, more information, and our community forum.
Until next time.
Until next time.